Good afternoon. I hope you had a nice break and some good ice cream. We're going to be starting with our panel discussion just now. The panelists will discuss how to get started with your research at Michigan State University. First of all, I'm going to ask all the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll start with the first question. So if you don't mind, Lorraine?
I think this is working. Hi, can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay. My name is Lorraine Weatherspoon. I'm a professor in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I have one of those appointments that you should never consider until after tenure, and that is a three-way appointment where I have an administrative, a teaching, and a research role.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Martinez. I'm an assistant professor at the Microbiology and Molecular Genetics Department. I'm starting my fourth year, so I just went on my first big evaluation and did great. So I'm fairly new here at MSU, but also very excited to share my experience with you guys.
Tom Voice in the College of Engineering. I'm an associate dean, and one of my charges is to oversee the promotion and tenure system. I hold a faculty appointment in civil and environmental engineering, where I do environmental chemistry.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Messina. I'm a professor of geography, also the senior associate dean for research and faculty affairs in the College of Social Science, and I'm also an assistant vice president of research. I study global environmental change.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Matthew Hirn. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Computational Mathematics, Science, and Engineering, which is a relatively new department here on campus. And I'm also affiliated with the Department of Mathematics. And I'm also entering my fourth year.
Hi, I'm Steve Esquith. I'm the Dean of the Residential College in the Arts and Humanities and a professor in the Department of Philosophy. I've been here for a while. And my research is in development ethics and peace and reconciliation.
Hi, my name is Connie Sung. I'm an associate professor at the at the College of Education in the Rehab Counseling Program, and I just got my tenure last month. So, thank you. And my research is in school-to-work transition for youth with disabilities.
I'm going to ask one question from the panelists, and I hope all of you can share your experiences. And then we are going to go and open it up to the audience. You can either ask questions in person or can go to Poll Everywhere to type in your questions. And we'll try to get to all the questions we can. Otherwise, we'll answer them afterwards online. So my first question to the panelists is, will each of you please share one or two pieces of advice for new faculty to keep in mind as they get started with their research and creative pursuits in Michigan State University?
I'll go ahead and start. One of the things that I think is absolutely critical, at least it was for me, is establishing a mentoring committee, and I'm sure you might have heard this from another source, maybe another time today. One of the things that I found with regard to the mentoring committee is that, yes, you need key people in your department, but for me, as a minority faculty member and someone who was really, I think in the beginning, overwhelmed by the campus, it was very important for me to also have a mentor outside of the department. And interestingly, my outside mentor was from the College of Social Sciences, but it was someone that wasn't afraid to use a red pen, but at the same time, someone that I trusted and I felt very comfortable with.
So for me, I think when I started, I was very afraid that I was not going to be able to recruit a lot of people fast enough to get our research going. And over these years, I have learned that I think it is important to be selective. We will get the people that we need to develop the ideas that we have and have a nice community inside the lab. So you do not rush it and don't feel that maybe experiments won't get done. I wanted to get to the get-go. I was ordering equipment even before I came here. So just to keep it in a nice pace and take time to develop your ideas on your own, optimize maybe some things on your own, and then start recruiting the right people for your lab.
I guess I'd start by saying, learn to say, I don't know, because we're in a culture where confidence about your area of work, of course, is part of what we're all brought up to do and speak and act like, but there's just a huge amount to learn, and you can learn so much from just asking people how the system works or how you can work together or whatever, so sort of acknowledging your limitations and asking questions. The second would be learn to say no. You'll have an infinite number of opportunities to do really interesting and cool stuff, but the only ones that matter are the ones that help you get to that promotion and tenure step.
So Tom took mine. He actually did. That was really unfortunate. That was a great one. I think and I'm gonna reiterate it. In particular, to learn to say no. This is a giant university. You will have so many opportunities here. So learn to say no without guilt, and learn to say no, quickly. You really will have a lot of opportunities. Sorry.
I think for me, one of the most important things in these first 3 years has been my support system. So for me, that's my family, but of course it could be friends as well. And this job, I think, can feel very stressful at times, but also very exciting, but also take up a lot of your time. And when I'm feeling down or when I'm up late at night writing a grant, those people who are close to me have really helped me get through those times, and I would urge you to sort of open up to them and rely on them when things are not perhaps seemingly going so well. They really have helped me get through some tough times. Also, I'll just say, again, for writing grants and sort of the idea of having mentors, it's been really helpful for me to have senior faculty that I've been able to reach out to, that have been able to give me examples of grants that they've written in the past or other things like that to really lean on their example to sort of chart my own path as well.
So my advice is a little different. As I hear the other folks on the panel talk about the need for mentoring and being selective, the importance of saying no when you need to, the importance of a supportive system, some family, friends, all that stuff makes great sense to me. And so I'm going to take you a little bit to the dark side and say that even when you do all that good stuff, you're still going to be faced with some fairly difficult dilemmas. And I think there are two kinds of dilemmas. One is a fairly straightforward kind where you have a certain amount of limited resources, whether it's time or money or facilities, and you can't do everything you want. You have to prioritize, you have to make choices, you have a team you're working with, or you have community partners you're engaged with, and not everyone is going to get your full attention, not everyone is going to have all of the support that they need to do good work. So the dilemma of choosing under conditions of scarce resources, because the resources will never completely match up to the needs, is going to be there. And that'll be a dilemma that you feel internally as well as just on paper. You'll have commitments to those folks, and it'll be hard to not say no for yourself, but to say no to them. The other kind of dilemma is even more challenging, and maybe this is a function of having been doing this for 30-odd years, and that's a dilemma between the commitments you have to your own scholarship and your own vision of what the importance of that scholarship is, and the responsibilities you have to the institution, to MSU, sometimes to MSU and your funding institution if it's different from MSU. And you need to, check the boxes. You need to make sure that you're in compliance. You need to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And that doesn't always align perfectly with your own vision of what the right thing to do is. So there are moral dilemmas as well as resource dilemmas. And instead of saying, oh gosh, I don't want to do this if that's what I'm facing, I would say that's what makes this work so powerful and so important to be done well. So that's my advice. Embrace the dilemmas. Yeah.
So for me, I think the three things that I would say is, number one is be knowledgeable and aware of the resources that is around, what is not enough, but what is available. Like, for example, I work very closely with our grants office, the VP research office. They provide a lot of grant writing support or workshop or regarding research, but also our own college, they have offices to help us, like how to write, how to publish, how to get grants. Second thing is, I think to me, the biggest thing is persistence. So no matter like publications or grants or even teaching, I learned over the years is persistent really helps me to get to where I would like to be. And the third thing that I think was really helpful when I started here is I don't just think about how I start meeting new people or collaborating with new people, but also think about who I have been working with when I was in grad school, because those are the people that I already have established relationship, and it's easier if I keep that relationship at the same time slowly build up my new relationship here. So.
Thank you. We'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. Does anyone have any initial questions? All right, well, we have one online. In your experience, if you have startup funds available, does this impact your ability to receive internal grants?
No, it didn't impact my opportunity to get internal grants at all. I don't think that would be true for everybody.
And it didn't affect me at all either.
Any questions from the audience? All right, we have another question. What suggestions do you have to help faculty protect their time for pursuing research as they begin their many new job responsibilities?
Something that has worked for me is that I have an open communication with my chair. The chair of the department, my chair of the department, is super supportive about that. So from the get-go, he was very honest about it and say, committed to protect my time, and sometimes has said that, first of all, I really need to learn how to say no. And then he suggested in my last evaluation to really use him to say no. So that is great. I think that if you feel that you're being overwhelmed, be honest with your chair. He's there to help you out.
Just to support that, the other thing is have things in writing, because there's a lot of things that you say and you talk to folk about, but then when it comes to when needs arise, and we have a lot of administrators over here, and that wonderful, happy, energetic new faculty member sometimes becomes a target. So I think you really, for me, I protected myself, and I still do, even though I'm a full professor now, by having things in writing.
Yeah, I would just add to that and also follow up on a comment I heard earlier about students and graduate students in particular. I would sort of caution a little bit ramping up to a lot of students very fast. Of course, you want to graduate a student or be near graduating a student perhaps by the time you come up for tenure, depending upon your department. But at the same time, mentoring students takes a lot of time and energy. And So I would sort of just say it might be to your advantage to take it a bit slow. And also, if postdocs are part of the culture of your area, I've found having a postdoc to be very helpful for taking a little bit of the burden off in terms of mentoring or management.
would add, look for synergies. One of the hardest things I think sometimes new faculty struggle with is finding lots of interesting research opportunities, but if they don't overlap, it really is hard sometimes because you're starting up new areas and there just isn't a lot of synergy. So where research can be complementary, I'll take it a step further. You're all going to do some service kinds of activities. Say yes to the service opportunities that give you other things. For example, serving on national panels gets you exposure, and some of those people are going to be the ones who write letters for you. When you're teaching, think about how that might complement your research, or vice versa. So I think not doing too many unfocused or scattered things and looking for things that all fit together with a lot of synergy creates an immense amount of time.
All right, we have some questions from the audience.
Following the question, say no, but what if some other faculty say no to me? Well, what do we do?
Well, then you don't want to work with that person, do you?
It's going to happen. It really will. It will happen. But it's important. Here it's a giant place. There'll be other people with whom to work, and there'll be other opportunities. So don't take it too personally. Everybody's sort of in the same boat, where they're balancing many competing opportunities and interests. And so if you think about it from the perspective that it's not personal, it's just whether these particular groups will work, I think you can be more open to opportunities when they come to you.
Could I get one more answer in on that one, which is consistent with what Joe just said. Don't take it personally is a really good thing to remember, because a lot of your time can be taken up with emotional labor, right? You can rethink, you can sort of get distracted. One needs to sort of move on, look for another mentor, look for another colleague, look for another partner, and not take it personally, I guess.
All right, next question, please.
Okay, so going back to the topic of graduate students and postdocs, I'm curious what were some of the selection criteria that you found especially helpful in selecting solid grad students and postdocs, and then some techniques that you found especially helpful in mentoring them from start to finish.
So I can answer at least the recruitment part. I haven't been here long enough to graduate any students yet, but for the recruitment, I think what's been really helpful for me is the willingness to put in time into that recruitment. The idea of calling prospective students and having a conversation with them, or Skyping with them via video conference, or if they're somewhat local, even going and sitting down and talking with them. You learn a lot about them. They also learn a lot about you. If there's someone who has many offers, this can, of course, also be helpful in convincing them that this is the right place for them and that your group is the right place to do that research. In terms of particular things, that's a bit tougher to sort of nail down. I guess that's where I've relied a little bit on more senior faculty as well, who have more experience recruiting graduate students and can sort of look for things in files that I might be oblivious to, or just might not think to say, like, oh, that's maybe a bit of a red flag, or things of that nature. And that's sort of more general, but I think, running sort of candidate students by senior faculty who have a lot of experience in these matters is also, again, fits into the whole mentorship thing, but I think is also something to keep in mind for this particular aspect of the job.
I absolutely agree with the recruitment process is key. So in our program, we spend time like interviewing all the students before we accept them. And then after we accept them, I try to create a system that in my lab, I have different level from postdoc to doc students, to master students, to bachelor, to undergrad students. So the way that they work is each like postdoc would supervise the doctoral students, and then doc students supervise master's level. And so a lot of time that create a working together environment that when they have questions, they will first talk to each other before they even come to me. And then we have bi-weekly meetings. So everybody, 10, 15 people all meet together. We talked about the progress. We've talked about things. So a lot of things can be discussed and resolved during that 2-hour meeting instead of meeting with every single student for half an hour, so that become more efficient. And the other piece that I try really hard is engage them in the different projects that I have. They really appreciate it because when we interview, we know that that student that I'm working with has the same passion, goals, or interests. So they really pour their heart into the work that I don't have to worry too much about like closely supervising or making a lot of changes to their work. At the same time, they appreciate it because they were given that many opportunities to work on things. So it's a win-win situation.
I would like to give a plug to diversity in a broadened use of that word. My best students have not been the ones who you think of as the top 5% of Harvard and Stanford. They've been the people who've come from slightly different academic backgrounds, slightly different cultural backgrounds, slightly different family situations, different disciplines. And there are just some incredibly bright people who can do some really great things and have really interesting ideas if you don't just focus on the sort of traditional stars within your narrow discipline.
One of the questions was, how do you guide the student along the way? One of the things that we do, at least in our community nutrition graduate program, is we have students have semester goals. We also, when we do the letter of offer, we set, it's a very long letter of offer, at least my students do, because I'm very clear about what my expectations are. Our millennial generation thinks that if they are getting paid half-time, it's 20 hours a week, and we know that there's no job nowadays that's 20 hours a week. So having students understand that even though you're getting paid for 20 hours a week, there are some expectations. There'll be good shorter times and there'll be longer times, but as long as the commitments are made, that's very important.
Yes, next question.
I wanted to ask you how we should manage our time, and it goes back to the comment that Steve made about how we have priorities and we decide what is the most important thing to do first. But then a challenge that I personally have is that I always feel like I have 24/7. So I can, always go back home and, I can, stay awake and finish the work. And but, I always feel like this should not be this way. So it has to be like, I don't know, a little in terms of time or in terms of the level of perfection that you want to take a course to or a research, for example.
So I can answer a little bit of that because what you're describing is more or less how I am. How I was. So last year I actually, through MSU, took a workshop that allowed me to organize my time in a very efficient way. And the way I did it was for 2 weeks, first of all, they put me to write all my goals for the next 12 weeks. And then throughout 1 week, I was recording what I was doing all day. Like for me, it's like, oh, I can sleep 2 hours and get this thing done, right? In between my goals, I had to include also how many hours of sleep more or less I wanted, if I wanted to spend time with my kids, all that, right? And one thing that I realized is that, first of all, I'm an overachiever. And I wasn't giving myself time also to reward myself, so that can be, even when you're successful, you're not rewarding yourself. Anyway, I was able to then just prioritize what I really wanted to do, establish maybe less ambitious goals, but still get me where I wanted to be, and then just identify the time where I'm the most productive reading, the most productive mentoring, then the things that I don't like, I put it when I'm kind of sleepy and I need a second cup of coffee. And then since then, I have time with my kids. I am sleeping more. I'm being more productive. I feel more happy. So I think that if you really take the time to establish, if not 12 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and really identify where you're the most effective and keep yourself on a schedule, you can be highly, highly efficient with that and sleep a lot.
I was going to add to that. I agree. So at 5 a.m. this morning, I was creating a Google Doc for a group of deans, 7 deans. And then I met one of the deans at 10 o'clock, and he said, I really didn't understand the directions you wanted us to follow for that Google Doc. And I thought, 5 a.m. I understood it at 5 a.m., but nobody else was going to understand it at 5 a.m. And Lauren may be able to confirm this. I hope she will. One thing that you need to figure out is how you think. Now, that sounds like a silly thing, but some people think by writing. So Lauren endured about 11 drafts of a proposal that I was working on with her, and that's how I was thinking it through. Other people think by talking it through, or they think in other ways. So part of what you have to figure out is not just how much time you have, but how you're going to use it to think through your research and do that most efficiently. And don't get doing more. Don't think in ways that aren't the best way for you to think.
All right, we have a question from online. Do you have any advice as to the number of grants people should be pursuing within their first few years at MSU?
That's a loaded question.
I think there are different strategies. The first 2 years, I applied for at least 10 to 15 grants, a lot. And then when you start getting them, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do everything? But there are people that I know, friends of mine, that have been highly successful as well with applying to 1 or 2 and dedicate a lot of time in writing those. So different ways work for different people.
Maybe I can offer a tiny bit on that too. So a lot of it depends on the college that the person is, where the person works in the departments. And it's important to talk to your department chair. MSU is a department chair strong institution. And so your chair is really the resource to ask that specific question. And within the College of Social Science, 4 of the departments in my college are very grant-driven departments where everybody's expected to have extramural funding. And 8 of the departments are not. And so from the perspective of the college, it really depends on where you're housed, which department, which discipline you're in. And so please talk to your department chair to have a better answer to that particular question.
I also wanted to add, it's not just a matter of quantity, but also the quality, because if we just go with the number, and then if the proposal is not in high quality, really think it through with strong arguments, with strong collaborators. No matter you submit 100, you won't get it. But if we can narrow it down to a certain number, but really spend the time and work on it, and also, to me, I find it very helpful to talk to the PO before you even think about pursuing the grant, because if the mechanism is not a good match, no matter how strong your proposal, you're not going to get funded. That's one piece. The other piece that I learned also is we only have 24 hours a day, and if we spend all the time in grant writing, meaning you don't have enough time in writing publications. And I learned that if you only have grants and you don't have publications, you won't get tenure. Also, without publications, you won't get grants because they look at your track record. So my first couple years, I actually spent more time in publications. Then starting second year, third year, I taken more time to attend the grant writing workshop, which I really enjoyed. Then I started writing smaller grants, and then internal, and then to foundation, and then to federal grants. So it's one step at a time instead of trying to aim high and then get discouraged. Even though I said persistent is important, but strategic and programmatic is also important.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, we have a question from online. Where would you look for support if your chair is not being supportive?
I'm doing this because my chair is sitting in the audience. Actually, you know, I haven't had that misfortune of not having a supportive chair, but I did, what happened to me was that I was rushed into a mentoring committee, and I went with people that my three chairs ago suggested, and it was actually toxic. After I went up for reappointment, I actually changed my mentoring committee, and there was one faculty member, and my chair was supportive of it, which was very helpful. But he also said to me, oh my, if you're taking that person off your committee, you're never gonna get tenure. Well, obviously I got tenure and I got a full professorship if I'm sitting here today. So I think that having that external mentor for me out in the college outside and a department outside of mine that gave me general academic counsel, and also she was very successful in her department, and she was brutally honest in the comments she gave to me, but it was helpful and it was easier for me to take it from her versus my chair at the time, who I felt was more worried about falling in the outs with this exceptionally well-reputed, established senior researcher.
So I'm going to answer it a little bit different. It's not that I ever had a conflict with my chair, but we changed chairs since I'm here, right? So then at a certain point, you're like, okay, who am I talking to first? And I found the same way. I am very lucky to have external mentors and also mentors from the department. People are very positive, and they help me out through the whole process, really helped me out. And they read publications that I submitted, grants, the first grants that I submitted, and gave me really good feedback before the panels did, and that helped a lot.
All right, we have another question online. How does the university value qualitative research, and what institutional supports are available for qualitative research?
I think in the social sciences, qualitative research, and also in the behavioral sciences, qualitative research is really evolving as a very much important area of research, where I was trained as a quantitative researcher, but more recently, a lot of my research is a mixed model where I use both qualitative and quantitative. I think that there are a lot of really good journals out there, but the university itself, there's 3 courses. There's a course in psychology, there's a course in community sustainability, there's also a course in human development and family studies, that are all 3 excellent courses in qualitative research. So I think that given that there's so many courses being offered and there's so many more faculty that are doing that kind of research, folk are recognizing the importance of doing research in that manner versus the traditional quantitative way.
And I want to add also in college education, we have we also have courses for qualitative research, and particularly in our program, now we mandate every student, they have to go through a qualitative course in order to get a degree when they graduate.
Any questions from the audience? Do you have any tips for new faculty about forming new research collaborations with either investigators at MSU or elsewhere?
Is it okay if I start? Because I actually have to run to a interdisciplinary meeting, and that's what I was going to say. Being someone in the humanities, it's been clear to me over the years that researchers in agriculture and engineering are applying for grants, and the humanities, whether it's creative work or whether it is interpretive work in the humanities, is not just an embellishment to the work being done on the science side, but it's integral to the research and creative work. So as you're thinking about your own work, whether it's in the natural and social sciences or in the professional areas, really think through how the humanities and the arts, creative work, can be integral to what you do, not just illustrative or an embellishment of what you do. And in fact, MSU is embarking upon creating a strategic plan for the arts in which that view of the arts as an equal partner in professional and scientific work here is going to be important. And funders are looking at that, and I think Doug Gage will probably talk more about that later. And on that note, I have to go talk to some artists about working with scientists. Yeah, okay.
I would also, again, just add that your chair or other senior faculty can be really valuable, but I would say in my particular case, my chairs were very helpful for this. They tend to have a very good knowledge of not only the researchers in their own department, but also related departments, and can help point you to prospective collaborations, which they think might be a good scientific match, but also even a good personality match, which should not be overlooked. And another thing that I did the very first semester I was here is I went around to several other departments on campus and gave research seminars. And this was very helpful, of course, for meeting people.
I want to make a pitch for, I guess again, the synergy piece of that. I have found an awful lot of times research collaborations grow out of chance encounters and serendipity, or other activities you might be doing. I have had a lot of experience with putting together team-taught courses or even short courses with teams of people, and inevitably you put people together for, let's say, a week in a short course to do some teaching, and a research proposal comes out a few weeks later, a few months later, whatever, because they get talking and they have a reason to talk. That's a job to do, and they find that common ground from a research standpoint.
So something that has helped me is to not be afraid of going outside of my comfort zone. So when I'm developing a project for a particular panel, particularly I seek NSF funding, and they like a lot of multidisciplinary stuff. So I served in panels and I realized how multidisciplinary it was, and I recognized that I'm an expert in what I do, but not an expert in everything else. So I started designing my own projects and then figuring out who would have the expertise to help into this project. I prepare my meeting, contact the people here and outside of MSU, and I haven't found a no yet. So, but was I scared at the beginning? Yes, because I didn't know necessarily their fields very well. I knew superficially what they do, but I don't know the nitty-gritty. And when they start talking, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh. But we have seek great collaborations together, and it has worked. So we respect each other, it's mutual respect, and we all have, it has been win-win situations. So just go outside of your comfort zone.
One of the opportunities that we have at MSU are a lot of research centers and thematic organizations around campus. So, for example, when I arrived, I completed my dissertation working in the Ecuadorian Amazon, and that's not a big place. There are not a lot of people working there. And, you know, I joined the Caribbean and Latin American Studies here, and lo and behold, there's an ag researcher at KBS working in the Ecuadorian Amazon as well. And so those different kinds of thematic centers that we have on campus, there's so many. Look into those as well and just affiliate with them, and that'll create an immediate affinity group.
And I would like to add, beyond MSU, look beyond MSU. When attend conferences, look for like those presentations that align well with your research interests, and then go attend and talk to those people. And the other piece that I found helpful is, while I'm mentoring students forming the guidance committee or dissertation committee, I have them research who will be potential committee members. At the same time, I actually have the opportunity to meet that person and eventually develop some kind of collaboration with those people.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question from online. If you continue to work with people who trained you in graduate school or as a postdoc, does it reflect badly in your tenure and promotion? And what are the expectations for establishing independence as a researcher?
I think that's an excellent question. And one of the things that I think most new graduates are faced with, I think if you are taking on a tenure position, you are trying to show your independence, but I think everybody said that you can still use folk as mentors, but you do have to show your independence. And if you're still gonna be continuing kind of under the umbrella of the person that mentored you, it seems like you can't think independently. My mentor was phenomenal in that she said, okay, now you're on your own. You know, it's like taking the baby and throwing them out of the bathtub. But she was like, you can ask me anything, anytime, but I want to see you come into your own. That's my personal experience.
I would agree, and what I found is I still keep that collaborative relationship, but it should keep like less than half of the work that you do is related to the mentor that you have been working with.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your advice with us. Please join me.